The last years of Napoleon's life, from 1815 to 1821, Napoleon was a prisoner. The seventh, final coalition against his Empire of the French had finally expelled him. We all know his final battle, where he was crushed at Waterloo in June 1815. We all remember the last epic stand of the Old Guard. However, the question remains, because history is written by the winners, what if we journeyed back over 2 centuries to the birth of the Napoleonic Empire? The French Revolution against the Bourbon monarchy had distorted a social system that had lasted for centuries. Crushed by debt, burdened by an unfair tax system, and suffering from soaring bread prices, the people grew increasingly desperate. Enlightenment ideas challenged the old order, while King Louis XVI failed to resolve the crisis. But it quickly became bloody, with Maximilien Robespierre the primary architect of the Reign of Terror, a period in which over 17,000 perceived enemies of the new revolutionary state were executed, many by the guillotine. A coalition formed by European monarchies to contain revolutionary France and who insisted on restoring order in Europe included Austria, Prussia, Great Britain, the Dutch Republic, Spain, Portugal, the Kingdom of Naples, Piedmont Sardinia, the Papal States, and several states of the Holy Roman Empire. Against all expectations, France survives by mobilizing its entire population through the levée en masse. This created an overwhelmingly large, highly motivated army driven by revolutionary zeal, even when lacking officers or professional soldiery. By 1797, thanks to victories on the Rhine by General Moreau and General Hoche, along with the ambitious commander of the Army of Italy, Napoleon, the War of the First Coalition concluded in France's favor. In 1798, General Napoleon Bonaparte led a scientific and military effort in Egypt to cut off British trade, as the British were key to the coalition's finance and coordination. Despite his failure to capture Syria, he had won famous battles, and his savant unlocked many secrets about the ancient lands. However, behind all the revolutionary splendor, Russia, Austria, Prussia, and Britain knew that Napoleon, first a revered general and then political leader, has once more transformed France. He was seen by many in France as a savior of the country. Napoleon took part in a coup against the French Directory, becoming consul. Over time, he consolidated his power, and after his victory at the Battle of Marengo in June 1800 against Austria, he was as powerful as any of the Bourbon kings who had come before him. In 1804, on December 2nd, he had crowned himself Emperor of the French. He had ridden the tide of revolution that shook the world, and now, in 1805, France was again tasked with defending its borders. Russia, Austria, Naples, England, and a collection of minor states were to march against France with superior numbers. The main thrust would be made by Austria and Russia. July 23rd. The Battle of Cape Finisterre. The Royal Navy sinks 2 French, checking any attempt to outdo the English at sea. Around this same time, Austria joins the Third Coalition. Just 5 days later, on July 28, Napoleon leaves for Germany to confront the Austrian armies. He had been on the coast at Boulogne, but was convinced his admirals, under the ultimate command of Villeneuve, could not hope to take on the Royal Navy. Some would think he had given in too early, but French sailors found it hard to disagree with the Emperor. By the end of August, an Austrian invasion was imminent. Napoleon reaches the frontier just before Austrian forces are prepared to cross into Bavaria. When he arrives, French troops had already engaged the Austrians. An Austrian army under General Mack, composed of his own forces and those of Archduke John from the Tyrol, moves to engage Napoleon. Meanwhile, Archduke Charles and his army have not yet completed their deployment plans, leaving Charles unable to fight a major battle during this critical period. With Austria's principal army still unavailable, Massena roams freely across northern Italy. Austria had hoped to seize the initiative before Napoleon could fully assemble his forces. Instead, it is the French emperor who now dictates the pace of the campaign. General Mack, reinforced by Archduke John's corps, advances cautiously. Reports begin arriving from every direction. French corps are appearing across southern Germany in rapid succession, and forcing Mack to reconsider his plans. To the east, Russia's armies under Mikhail Kutuzov are still on the march. The first Russian forces have not yet reached the Austrian frontier, and reinforcements remain weeks away. Every passing day favors Napoleon, who recognizes the opportunity immediately. If Mack can be defeated before Charles and the Russians unite with him, the Third Coalition's plan to spear at the heart of France has begun to unravel. The race for southern Germany has begun.
Nous étions épuisés de fatigue, trempés par la pluie et la neige, mordus par le froid et campés dans la boue. Mais malgré notre misère, la présence de notre empereur nous faisait tous supporter. L'empereur connaissait nos privations et notre fatigue, qu'il partageait lui-même. Il savait aussi que les soldats murmuraient, et il disait « ils ont raison », mais c'est pour épargner leur sang que je leur fais endurer ces épreuves. Quand nous entendions cela, il pouvait nous faire accomplir ce qu'aucun autre n'aurait pu obtenir de nous. We were worn out with fatigue, wet through with rain and snow, nipped with cold and camped in the mud. But in spite of our misery, the presence of our emperor made us bear it all. The emperor knew of our wants and our fatigue, which he shared. He was aware, too, that the soldiers grumbled, and he said they're right, but it is to spare their blood that I make them undergo these hardships. When we heard that, he could have made us do what no one else could.
As the Grande Armée pushed deeper into Germany, its greatest enemy was not the Austrian army, but distance. Hundreds of thousands of men, along with tens of thousands of horses, consumed enormous quantities of food and forage every day. Wagons struggled along muddy roads, supplies arrived late, and local magazines were quickly exhausted. Across southern Germany, France's allies provided invaluable assistance. Bavaria, Württemberg, and Baden opened their roads, depots, and workshops to the Grande Armée. Their governments supplied provisions, draft animals, and fresh recruits, while their soldiers secured supply routes and garrisoned important towns, allowing experienced French troops to remain at the front. Napoleon had by now defeated General Mack, their armies marching in incessant rain and mud, by surrounding his forces at the Bavarian city of Regensburg. The remnants of Austrian forces from garrisons and Vienna's defenders had joined Kutuzov, whose Russians now made up the majority of Allied forces. And with the Russians now closing the distance, Napoleon needed to make a decision. It was now mid-October. Even with the assistance of small German states, the French Grande Armée was relying on a supply line which stretched all the way to Paris. He could either retreat, perhaps saving his army from destruction, or force a battle where the French could win a stunning and complete victory. Finally, Kutuzov was joined by Tsar Alexander of Russia and the Emperor Francis of Austria. Allied envoys reported on the timidness of Napoleon, one of them even lecturing him on European politics. He had listened so politely that when the envoy returned to the Allied camp, he relayed, "The French army is on the eve of its doom." Napoleon sought to appear weak, even requesting an armistice. With this, their scouts also reported French soldiers preparing to withdraw from Feldsberg. Napoleon was about to launch one of his greatest traps.
Soyez audacieux et rusés dans vos plans, fermes et persévérants dans leur exécution, déterminés à atteindre une fin glorieuse. Be audacious and cunning in your plans, firm and persevering in their execution, determined to find a glorious end.